Hello. Today we will be exploring the working as an architect with University of Virginia alumni. I'd like to welcome Jeffrey Murphy, the partner with Murphy Burnham Buttrick Architects. Welcome, Jeffrey.
Thank you, and happy to be here.
And I'd also like to welcome Julie Nelson, partner with BKSK Architects. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you. Good morning.
So let's dive right into it. Why did you choose a career as an architect? Julie, why don't you jump off?
Sure. I chose the career really because it was a chance to do something creative and tangible. I'd always been interest in the arts. I don't think I quite understood the construction end of it when I first started at UVA as an undergrad in their undergraduate architecture program. It turned out to be something I find very interesting, the way things get put together. So I was quite lucky in that respect. But that was really what drew me to it, was a way to sort of earn a living in a field that was creative. And also I think it tapped into my love of cities. Even though I grew up in the suburbs of Northern Virginia, the idea of cities was always something that was interesting to me. And so it was a sort of natural fit in that way.
Wonderful. And what about you, Jeffrey?
And I would say that I was at UVA. I came as many people did as a pre-med major, and for a couple of years I really bounced around. I took a lot of courses at UVA. I was looking at economics as a major. I was looking at government, and I took Robert Vickery's language of design course and just got really turned on by that. It tapped into a lot of things that I was already interested in. I as a kid, hung around on a lot of construction sites and worked summers and weekends on them. My grandfather was a builder and developer, and so those kinds of things sort of jived with some of the things that were going on in that class, and so I just, after actually being at UVA for a couple of years, decided to transfer into the architecture program.
Very nice. So Jeffrey, what were your biggest challenges in your first year of work, when you actually went from school into the field?
Yeah, when I got out of school, it was sort of the mid '80s, and we were sort of in the middle of a recession, and I loaded up my Volkswagen and drove out to San Francisco because I wanted to work there without a job, and I spent about two months. Finally landed a job at a great firm called Kaplan McLaughlin Diaz. And I think, I was just kind of totally thrilled to have a job, and I was down to my last few $100s when I got this job, and so they just sort of threw me into the mix, and I was doing a lot of presentation work. I really wasn't thinking too much about the quality of my experience. I was just happy to be there, and in any event, it turned out to be an amazing experience, and I learned a lot, and it helped me focus some of the things that I wanted to get out of my earlier experiences in architecture offices.
Very nice. And what about you, Julie?
I had a different path. I actually started out of UVA at a design build firm in Northern Virginia. I went back home. Similar economic strain. I think there always seems to be a story about graduating in a recession. Every generation of architects seems to have that in common. But sort of building on what I talked about, it's interesting, the differences between Jeff and my starting was I had no construction experience. So I actually started in a design build company, working out of somebody's basement. We did house additions and that kind of thing. And it was, I had a strong design foundation from architecture school, but I didn't have a great technical background. And so it was a way that I could build up a knowledge base in an area I didn't have a lot of confidence in, but because the construction and the design were in the same company, it was a kind of safe space where I could go out in the field and talk to guys that we're building things and learn from them rather than the more traditional role of architect and contractor, sometimes working, hopefully not, but sometimes as adversaries. So it was a great opportunity to learn. I think one of the things that happens, in all honesty, is you get a little overwhelmed with all the things you don't know. Architecture, like many professions, requires a deep and vast knowledge in a broad variety of subjects, which is its interest and its terror when you're starting out, but there's so much to know. And also, I think, honestly, sort of learning how to be a woman in a construction field. You know, it's a little bit more accepted now, but at the time it was still not common for women to be out in the field and to be talking, you know, to not be intimidated as a 22-year-old novice in the field and talking to guys that have been doing this their whole lives, and learning field presence and learning how to work collaboratively with other people in the industry, and learning from each other and working together. Rather than some of the traditional ways people think of architects as being kind of the master builder, Superman. And so it started me realizing that in every project, there's a broad range of expertise that you can tap into across disciplines. And it's, I think, something that helped as you move in your profession.
Wonderful. So you talked a bit about, you know, not knowing the construction aspect before you got in, and how you need to have a wide breadth of knowledge. So what are some things that UVA students can do to help prepare for that? So what are some things they can do, exposure that they can get to different areas to make sure that they all are well-rounded and are able to make the most out of their first year experience?
Well, I think if you sort of break it down into, there's construction experience and there's what we'll call technological, which is kind of how the interface with computers and CAD systems, and then there's the sort of design and the people. So it's sort of 4 categories of things. And I think, you know, construction jobs are a great opportunity to get out and get your hands dirty. I didn't do that, and I wish I had. I think it would have built some confidence. You know, I think just get out there and try as many things as you can. Particularly when you're young, you can do so many different things, between going to lectures, getting out in the field, talking to people, going to sites. People love talking about themselves, so just get out and ask questions and try it all. I think there's a really welcoming environment to people sharing knowledge. Particularly now, there's a particular collaborative ethos, I think, in architecture. And I would say tap into it. And even by seeing this video and using the mentorship program, you know, people are willing to give their time if you really just want to get out and ask questions.
Wonderful. I love that. Do you have anything to add, Jeffrey?
Sure. I would say as a student, there's a lot that you can be thinking about when you're at school. And, you know, when we're looking for people to hire, we're so impressed with students that have internship experience and construction experience. It's really shown that they're passionate about learning about the field. And you know, to be able to come into a firm out of school with you know, certain kind of CAD skills, Revit skills in particular, as I'm sure a lot of people are out there saying, but also just having a broad experience is just a tremendous asset when you're looking for a job initially, and it also demonstrates that you're really serious about being an architect and working in an office. So I would just say as much experience and honing of skills that you can get while you're in school will help you to not only get a job out of school, but actually to get a job where a firm is willing to give you some responsibility, and that then leads to an even better work experience while you're at a firm.
Wonderful. So Jeffrey, we'll start off with you. How would you describe a typical day or week in your position?
Sure. Well, Julie, I think our firms are sort of similarly sized. We're a medium-sized firm. We have about 30 people, and that's really by design. And my partners and I set out not to have a small firm or a supersized firm, but really this medium-sized firm, which in a lot of ways enables me as an architect to not only run a firm and go out and get work, but actually to do the work and to be involved in design and be involved in meetings with clients. And so from my standpoint, that's really important. My Mondays are my crazy days because I feel like I start a meeting at 9 and I get out of that meeting at 5 o'clock at night. For the past 10 years, I've been working at a big project at St. Patrick's Cathedral where we were the executive architects there. So I start off my Monday with about a 3.5-hour meeting with different groups on that project, and then I meet with Monsignor Ritchie, who is the rector at the cathedral. And then I come back to the office. I usually have an hour or so, and I have lunch with my two partners, Mary Burnham and Sarah Grant. We go out around the corner. We talk about the firm and business and what we did over the weekend. And then pretty much the rest of the afternoon, I'm in an office meeting with everyone in our office. And then I meet with my partners and our financial person, our financial director, and our marketing director. And then I sort of have that out of the way for the rest of the week. And the rest of the week is really a combination of design meetings on certain projects, meeting with clients, in-house meetings on certain projects. And then probably about 30–40% of my time is spent trying to get work, hustling work, chasing down leads, maybe preparing for an interview that we may have coming up. And that's sort of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then Friday is kind of, I purposefully leave that as free as I can be. So I sort of catch up with work that I didn't get to do during the week. We usually focus a lot on design discussions in the office on Fridays. And that's sort of how it goes. And, you know, obviously things come up, but we have a big interview, or we're sort of focused on that for the week, and the sort of rhythm of the week may change. But sometimes I have to travel. We do some work overseas and in other states. So, you know, I may be away 1 or 2 days, but what I just described is really sort of a more typical week that I would have.
That's great, thank you. And what about you, Julie? Can you describe a typical day or week?
Sure, it sounds a little similar to Jeffrey's, except your Monday is my Friday. But I think we're unusual in that we both, as Jeffrey said, have similar sized firms and partners. So we may be a little bit unusual in that we tend to both be jack of all trades, that we're doing marketing, we're doing business analysis, which is something we really don't talk about much in architecture school, but a lot of time is spent just making sure we are getting work, getting paid for work, and doing that kind of thing. Design work each week. And then the other thing probably both of us are doing is out in the field in construction. So you have projects in design, in working drawings, and then in construction kind of all at the same time, which makes your weeks quite varied and interesting and taps into different strengths and sort of parts of your brain. So I think that's unusual. A lot of architects do tend to specialize. Some are strictly financial, some are design, some are technical. And I think both of us as partners in these size firms were unusual in that we have to do it all, which is something that keeps it interesting. I think the other thing that Jeffrey talked about in his work with St. Patrick's that's interesting is that we as architects immerse ourselves in these weird worlds of, you know, the Catholic Church, or I did an Episcopalian convent for nuns, and then, you know, I'm doing a center for fiction, and then, you know, we'll be doing a playground, and it's, you immerse yourself in the world of a client and you learn everything about that, and then you sort of finish the project and you move on. But it's something they don't really talk about is when you're thinking about going into the profession, it's just how you are introduced to the very intimate ways people live their lives, either professionally or personally, through the vehicle of doing these projects, and how intimate you get with your clients. And a lot of time is just spent really talking to people and finding out what's going on, what their concerns, is the project working, all of those things. So it's a lot more social. It's both taps into introversion and extroversion. You need to be social and engaged with your clients, and also carve out time for design work, which is some of the most inefficient way you can spend your time. Because if it's not working, it's not working. And there's no way to make it go faster.
If I could pick up on what you were saying, Julie, I think perhaps the biggest surprise for me once I started my firm was how much people time there is, and that's good. I'm a people person. I like the challenge actually of getting all these constituents, all these people involved, stakeholders involved in a project, all moving in the same direction on a project. And I find that to be tremendously rewarding when everybody's striving for this ultimate goal of design excellence and an amazing project that everyone's thrilled with. And for me, that was a real surprise. I thought that, I would spend more time with a roll of trace, noodling around with parties and trying to understand design in a more focused way. And I would say that my role as an architect, I obviously have people in my firm that do more of that, but my role is really almost as a director, and really trying to get the most out of the people that are on my team. And what I think is so neat about that is when you put these teams together, and it can be the client team, it's the contractor team, it's the design team. When you can sort of establish as a partner certain objectives and aspirations for a project, and get everyone pulling in the same direction, and then something that comes out of that is this wonderful project. I just find that to be tremendously rewarding, and it's something that I could never do just on my own. But having that interaction with so many people and getting them all participating and bringing their best ideas and their A games to these projects is just a total thrill when it all turns out well.
So you both talked about how you have a passion for design, and that's one of the reasons why you got into this, or a passion and interest in design and art, and you have to work with a diverse group of people and clients. And so do you ever have a client that wants you to go in a direction you're like, no, this is against everything my design heart speaks for, it shouldn't be blue, it should be green, but you have to kind of either convince them your way or kind of sway? So Julie, can you talk about have you had any challenges like that where it's like you kind of have to concede, or are you able to kind of persuade?
Oh, am I able to persuade? Gosh, I probably work a little differently with a lot of my clients than other architects do. I'm always profoundly aware that clients are investing a lot of frankly, their money into a project, and I'm very respectful that this really wants to reflect on their vision as much as it does ours. I think both of our firms are similar in that we likely get clients that come to us because they know our work, and there's a consensus and a sort of already I'll call it a sympathy or a sort of common ethos. That we rarely get clients that come to us that don't understand what our firm stands for and the values and the kind of design. And we hope they have a respect for expertise. So typically, if we're working well with a client, that means we're having a healthy exchange and a dialogue. And typically, if there's something that we disagree with, it's founded on a sort of a structure of either technical or experiential or something that we bring expertise to, that we walk a client through a process. So and rarely do you come to a head on an issue where through sort of an exchange of their position and our position, there isn't a common ground and a solution to be found. Issues aren't really like, oh, it's blue or it's green. It's never that clean. There's always a reason the client wants something a certain way, and a reason we might give a pushback. And so it's really a conversation about common goals and starting there. And it's like, my partner Joan always has a great question, which I love to ask clients when they start sort of saying, well, can we do this or can we do that? And she'll sort of come and say, what is the problem you're trying to solve? And just by pulling out from digging into a solution, but rather backtracking to what are we trying to achieve, we can find a common path together that gets us to a solution.
I love that. Excellent. Jeffrey, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I would just say that, when we start projects, and it's very important to establish, what the big ideas of the project are and what the objectives are. And we often find that if you do that and you carry the ideas through at every level of design, that you can explain why something should be the way it is. And a lot of times, our clients, who are all, smart, interesting people in most respects, understand that. And so we build a framework where decisions can be made by our clients. But, oftentimes a client will come back and say, you know what, I just don't like that, or I don't want to do that. And I agree with Julie, they are investing a lot of time and a lot of money in these projects, and they want the best for the project. And our job is really just to listen and figure out where we take it from there and try to problem solve. And so usually when a client comes across with perhaps a disagreeable idea or a choice, there's some good reason behind that. And in some ways that'll lead to another kind of design effort that sort of takes you off in a different direction. So, you can never look at that as, oh my gosh, they're not listening to my vision, or they're not letting me do what I want. You should look at it as a challenge that just needs to be addressed and may actually take you off in an even more interesting direction that could improve the design.
Wonderful. So what do you like most about working as an architect? Let's start off with Julie.
Well, what do I like most? I have to say, it is absolutely thrilling to walk around the city and see things that you have done. I'm finishing a project on Hudson Yards. It's a tower, and I'm actually not that enamored with doing towers. They're sort of funny projects, but I have to say, I was going somewhere through the Lincoln Tunnel, and we popped out in New Jersey, and you could see it on the skyline. And I never imagined, as a sort of kid growing up in Northern Virginia, that I would have something that would be that visible. Terrifyingly sometimes, because sometimes you see something, oh, I really don't think that worked very well. But it's really exciting to be able to do what we do, and know that it's going to be there if we're successful a lot longer than we are. And you really impact the city. Politics is something we're talking about now. Buildings affect those things, public spaces that people can gather, intimate spaces where people live their lives. I mean, we have a real privilege as architects to be able to do that. And it's humbling and terrifying to think about it, but it's also energizing every day to be given this opportunity.
That's so cool. What about you, Jeffrey? What do you like most about working as an architect?
I think for me, I love the fact that it's my day is so varied, and what I do is it seems like every day can be a different kind of day, and I'm not doing, I'm not selling bonds or something that's repetitive in a certain way that I think would drive me crazy. But I feel like I really am able to keep myself going and keep myself interested in the profession, because it is so varied. And I think, to add on to what Julie was saying, it is an incredible privilege to have somebody give you this big chunk of money and say, okay, help us spend this in the best possible way, and pursue design excellence, and satisfy our community and or my personal needs, and in a way, it's an incredible confidence that people show in you, and And I think that when it all goes well, and at the end of the day, there's a great project out there that you've been very involved in, and you've helped to manage the whole group of people involved and get them in the right direction to make this great thing. It's an incredibly gratifying thing, and it really is a privilege to be able to do that kind of work.
That's so cool. So I'm going to throw a curveball here. Who is your favorite architect? Let's jump back in with Jeffrey.
Oh my gosh. I mean, that's...
We're supposed to say Thomas Jefferson without even thinking about it.
That's a good answer.
That's a trick question. Sorry, Jeffrey, go ahead.
I mean, that's a hard one, because I admire so many architects for the specific work they do. My son is in the planning department at Cornell, and I think it's Skirbon Hall, which is the new architecture school there, was done by Rem Koolhaas, and I just think that it is incredible. It's a brilliant project, and I love that project. There's someone like Richard Datner in New York City, who's done a tremendous amount of public work. I admire him for the tenacity that he's had to somehow manage to do great work in the public realm. So I think I think every time something new comes up, every time a project's completed, I somehow can admire an architect that's done something exceptional. And actually, we look at a lot of work of many architects out there to help inform our own work. So I think the neatest thing about who's out there doing great work is they have so much influence, not only within their projects, but how they influence other architects. And I find that to be interesting.
That's great. All right, what about you, Julie? Aside from TJ, who's your favorite?
I think in some ways you sort of look at certain architects depending on what what kind of inspiration you're looking for. I tend to look at an Italian architect, Carlo Scarpa, for his details and sense of materiality. I often say to myself, what would Renzo Piano do? Just because I think as a modern craftsman and somebody who's been able to take classical language of architecture and translate it into a beautiful modernism all over the world, I sort of love his work. And then I'm a little different than Jeffrey in that I'm a second generation partner. So my firm was founded by 4 partners, all of whom have been incredibly generous as mentors. And I learn a lot from them. And so they are also probably 4 of my favorites just because of their generosity and their teaching and giving me the opportunity to join the firm and then grow within the firm. And so I learn something from them every day as well.
That's wonderful. So any final advice for University of Virginia students that are interested in working in this field? So preparing for and succeeding as an architect. Let's start off with Julie.
I think my simple advice would be, if you are passionate about it, throw yourself into it 100% and just get on with it and do it. And if you're not passionate, probably find something else. It's a demanding profession, incredibly rewarding, but it's not for everyone. But if it is for you, then just proceed without doubt and without fear.
I love that. What about you, Jeffrey?
Well, I would that last thing that Julie said is absolutely on the mark, and I agree with that. I would say I wrote down a few things, so I'll say that one is, I think anybody who's at UVA should really use the UVA network and reach out to alumni. There's nobody from UVA that if they called me or a friend of mine and said, hey, look, I'm in New York, I'd really like to talk about working in New York, would you please talk to me? We would always do that. And so really consider using the UVA network. I think the other thing you have to do is really curate your career. Think hard about what you want to do. What's so cool about architecture is that you can make it into any kind of thing you want it to be. And you don't have to, you know, there are so many different paths in this profession, and that you can really tailor your career to your real interests. So really think hard about every job that you take, and make sure that it's sort of leading up to something that you want in your life. And then the other thing I would say is when you first start out, get into a firm and just be really grubby about the work that you do. Try to get as much responsibility as you can. And you know, I think in my first big job, I worked at a firm called Guathme Siegel, and I went there because I wanted to learn how to put buildings together, and I wanted to learn how to do details and wall sections and things like that. And I got assigned to the Guggenheim Museum restoration, and I ended up doing all the wall sections for the new building that they built there. But the thing about it that was so awesome was that I was totally terrified, and I came into work every day just like not knowing if I was going to be able to do my job. But at the end of the day, at the end of my time at Guathme Siegel, I had learned so much, and it was because I was really challenged. So you really have to put yourself in a position where you're going to be challenged, and take as much responsibility on early as you can. And if you fall down, you know, there'll be someone there to help you pick up the pieces. But if you succeed, you're going to learn a tremendous amount.
I love that. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. All of our, both of our guests today are mentors in Virginia Alumni Mentoring. University of Virginia students can log into alumnimentoring.virginia.edu now and connect with other alumni for additional insights about the process of starting a career in their specific field. I'd like to thank you both for joining us today, and everyone to check out more career and industry insights on career.virginia.edu. I will see you next time.
Great. Thank you.